Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's another episode of the CSFL Podcast. And today I'm joined by two guests to try and break down a bit of free agency as we enter into day 4 for next Tuesday and have a little look, a preliminary look at the draft. So I'm joined by two guests, as I said. First one is a complete regular. I mean, he's on every single podcast, and that is the Titans GM, Josh. Josh, welcome back. We're in the off-season now. Titans struggling to get some players signed by the looks of it.
Yeah, no, I think the struggle is real for everyone. And we have a full set of GMs throwing out money everywhere. So, I mean, it's good for the league. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Tough. Everyone's got a bit of cap this year because the hard cap has gone up. But one team that's certainly taken advantage of that is the Carolina Panthers and Kairos, who is the second guest on the show. You guys have had a fantastic day 3 and day 1, I think, looking at your free agency signings.
Yeah, I'd say both.
Yeah, it's been pretty good, a little more than I was expecting. So we might be in a little bit of cap trouble here.
Not this year, though, probably next year. But I mean, if you want to go for it and try and win with Cam Newton, I mean, certainly some of the signings you've made so far have been really interesting to see. And I'm sure that we'll talk about that as we talk about the wider parts of free agency. Cool. So, I mean, let's try and break it down, really. I mean, there's been so many signings so far. The cap's gone up. Obviously, we've seen some slightly bigger salaries than we did last year, where everyone was sort of more restricted. I mean, perhaps I'll throw it open to Josh first. What signings do you sort of see that were really interesting and sort of made you think, the team make a move in the right direction? There's just so many. We could be here all day talking about loads of them.
Yeah, no, I just, I think for the most part, I really want to say that every team that's kind of dove into free agency has moved themselves forward. I've been just kind of really impressed with just the activity. The last few free agencies, we kind of talked about teams that were dominating free agency, whereas, the signings have been relatively spread out. If I had to lean in one direction of a team that's kind of just push themselves into just maybe another tier, I would probably maybe say the Raiders. I think they've had a really good and quiet free agency where they've just added to what they had before, and I think that Peyton Manning is supremely underrated, and that once we get in this new engine where quarterbacks are supposedly able to see open wide receivers a little bit more, he's gonna shine because I think he still has league high intelligence and maybe even accuracy in 93. So yeah, I think that they're gonna have a much better season with Lynch. The other one would probably be the Panthers, but I'll give it to you guys. And those are
yeah. I mean, let's talk about the Raiders first. You've brought them up to begin with. I mean, Kairos, what's your views? I mean, they obviously brought in Peyton Manning. We knew he was going to go somewhere else from the Colts because the Colts GM has openly said he does not like Peyton Manning. We knew he was going to go somewhere. Miami, we thought we were going to manage to snag him early on in free agency, and the Raiders kind of appeared out of nowhere and grabbed him on a 3-year deal.
Yeah, I think it's a great signing. They're not, I won't say that they're like contenders yet or anything, but they have a pretty good two-man crew there with Lynch and Peyton Manning. They've got a couple of very good offensive linemen, Satele and Baker. And I think if they can grow on that in the draft and in the rest of free agency and stuff, they can field a really good offensive team.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. They have some really bad contracts that should be coming off their books in the next 2 or 3 seasons. So, they just keep the steady upward arc. They're gonna make some noise probably, 2015, 2014, or maybe even sooner if they pull some really good trades off.
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. I think it kind of shows the power of the ability to improve in free agency in the league. We all know that re-signing guys on contracts is a painful task in draft day sports pro football, given the cap and the overall rating requirements. So we've seen teams, completely rebuild over the course of 1 or 2 free agency periods, and the Raiders certainly have started to do that with Manning. As you guys said, the contract's coming off next year, probably can make another big hit next year. I mean, they've signed some underrated guys, if I'm honest, as well. So I look at just some of them, so they I think they addressed their guard position problem that they had. They brought in a pretty solid wide receiver as well, in Caulfield. A wide receiver 3. Let's be honest, he's not going to be anything else. And starting to just try and pick up some of those undervalued guys, I think, who probably might go cheaper than normal, which is interesting to see. So yeah, certainly the Raiders are one of the teams that I agree with you guys, making some good positive moves.
Yeah. And I think the days of teams having 3 or 4 elite wide receivers are going to be gone for maybe a season or two. Because I mean, my wide receiver ranks got decimated. Your wide receiver ranks got decimated in free agency. So it's spreading out some. So I think that even having just the guys who have the trio of 80, 80, 80, like those guys might actually be like 3s now, with the way the wealth has been spread out.
Yeah, no, certainly has brought a bit of league parity with the wide receiver position really across the league. We haven't seen any 2 or 3 elite guys go to one team yet, which is really interesting. So, I mean, Kairos, we'll talk about the Carolina Panthers maybe a bit later. But are there any other teams that you see looking at free agency and you're surprised, or you're really interested to see how that team moves forward now? That may have made 2 or 3 key signings.
Yeah, it's actually the team that Peyton Manning left. Indianapolis Colts. They were able to get Alex Smith at quarterback. Then they signed a top tier running back in Adai. I don't know if that's how you say it.
I think it is.
Adai. Yeah, that's not one of the ones I'm going to ask you later, because I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
And then they actually got an elite tackle as well in McNeil. So then they've got some good depth as well. I'm looking at their whole page.
Yeah, I mean
they've signed a lot of players, and they're all pretty good.
They have. I mean, they brought McNeil in, top elite tackle. They brought Alex Smith in, as you said, to replace Manning, which makes sense. And I think the other one that I was just trying to pick up here was Tracy Porter as well. I thought that was a really good signing for them, considering how, in my opinion, how slow their back position was. Tracy Porter is a pretty solid starter for any team. So to get him on a 4-year, £3-4 million deal there is fantastic.
Great contract.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
I was after him.
Yep, so was I.
Wasn't offering me that much, but
it was really funny. It was really funny in the chat. I think it was Dennis was like, how many guys have you signed? And he was like, I think about 7 or 8. And he's like, are you out of money? He's like, no.
I think he cut a lot of people. So.
But they're really good signings, and they're great contracts.
They are.
He did. Yeah, he cut a lot of people. He made that trade with the Texans as well to move to heavy contract tackles, I think it was, or a tackle and a guard maybe, to free up even more cap space. And he's fully utilized that going forward.
That worked out perfectly for him. He gave up a good tackle and then signed another one that was of equal talent for a cheaper price. So very good cap management.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's the other team that I was interested in seeing how they've been doing is really around the Chargers. The Chargers have been fairly active and made some interesting signings, which I think is going to improve their overall win-loss ratio next year. I think even if they just standard pat for now. So picking up Ryan Matthews was a good, solid signing. They've got an elite running back now, which you just need in this league. Wade Smith, I thought, was a massive underrated signing, and Penn as well. Filling out some of that line core, on offense.
Wasn't Ryan Matthews originally their running back?
I believe he was, but I mean they've re-signed him.
Yeah, no, I know. I meant not as in I think they traded him away and maybe re-signed him eventually.
Yeah.
He's made his way back to them.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah.
Spent his first 3 years there, went to San Francisco for a year, and then came back.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, that they're just making small moves just to try and bring up, some positions of need that they have.
I was surprised. One of my surprises of the offseason, I was surprised that the Bills spent so much on Aaron Hernandez. I just thought that they had a lot more team needs than the big name wide receiver, but that offense is going to be potent.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting just the Bills anyway, because they'll be able to use a playbook next year. So playbook gate is finally over. So it's going to be interesting just to see how they do. Just because Toasty is going to be allowed to actually run a playbook or a strategy with Tim Tebow, who we have been talking about, saying that he's been underutilized last year. So that's going to be fun to watch.
Excellent quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, other things that I've kind of seen. I mean, we could talk about the Saints and the new GM coming in and bringing back Colston and co. But I mean, to be honest with you, the Saints, have had some positions they need to address, but they've still got caps, so it's probably not fair to comment on them too much yet.
They still got about 50 mil, if I remember, to blow.
Yeah, so they've got a huge amount of cap to play with.
We've got about 30. Yeah.
30 now. Okay. Oh yeah.
I mean,
about 30 now.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of the recent free agency, I'll throw two names at you that I thought were, two names I thought were really, really good signings because of the cost, and because I wanted both of them. So the Chicago Bears signed Leon Hall to 4 years, $4.5 million, and the Cleveland Browns signing DeMarcus Ware, the linebacker who I had last year, for 1 year, $8 million. I thought they were both really excellent value signings.
Yeah, no, I think so as
well.
well.
That was a great signing.
The Ravens getting Titus Young for 3 years, 1.7 mil.
And Wes Welker, sorry, not Walker.
Yeah.
The issue with names has already begun.
I'm pretty sure Young is young. I think he's only like 25. So
Yeah.
that's some great value there. I actually considered signing him as well, but just did not think that anyone would be offering him a minimum contract. So,
No, and I mean, I guess in terms of the team that's probably splashed the most cash, I mean, we're talking about the Panthers later, but obviously the Falcons bringing Sue and Pouncey in on big money deals there. That's going to improve their talent level considerably from last year.
Yeah, they've been throwing money around. If you go look at the free agent bids, they're on all the big name free agents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's interesting because we're not talking. I mean, I think it's probably fair to say we're not talking about one team here. Whereas last year and the year before, we were probably talking about one or two teams because they were the only teams that had cap room, to be honest with you, and had pretty much free play of the market. Whereas this year, you can see we're talking about 4, 5, 6 different teams, which is great, to be honest with you. Certainly greater league parity. But yeah, let's talk about the Panthers because the Panthers have probably made the biggest move, I think, in overall talent shift from where they were at the beginning of the offseason to where they are now. Before I bring Kairos in to talk about his views on his team, Josh, let's get your views on the Panthers. What do you think in terms of moves? How do you think they're going to go in terms of next season if they just stood pat with what they've got now?
Well, I mean, they clearly have made I mean, you're right here, so I won't say clearly, but it seems to me that you made the decision that you lost because of your defense, and I would kind of agree with that. The Lions kind of had their way on the field, so bringing in Woolfolk and bringing in Urlacher and kind of figuring out who you're going to keep and everything. But I mean, that defense is really, really good, and I mean, I think that as we all get better, we're starting to learn more about how to keep our best players on the field as much as possible. Maybe throwing them at defensive end or defensive tackle or strong safety, just whatever they're eligible for. And with some of the studs you have on defense, you're going to have a core of it's like verging on Legion of Boom over there.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal. Was my number one goal this offseason was to get the defensive line as good as I could get it. So last year I was starting Pendleton and Ellis at defensive tackle, who are 78 and 75 rated. And then two of my top signings were Wilfork and Harris at defensive tackle. So big improvements there. Hopefully the run game is going to be able to be slowed down a lot more.
So if you allow me to interject for just a second, sure. I think that, and this has been on my mind for a while. There's two prevailing theories in the league of the best way to run a defense, because I would posit that I have been incredibly unlucky building a defensive line during my run. If you'll see, I haven't had any tackles better than a 77 or ends better than I think an 82 is the best end I've had on my defense, and I'm starting to really think that in this engine is mostly about controlling the middle of the field, but at the same time, the Ravens, over there are just sack masters, and they're able to put up the same amount of defense. So I don't really know which is the best route to go, but I think I'm going to be definitely watching that because I think last year you went more for a perimeter-based defense, and it seems like, like you said, this year you're going for more of a beat you in the trenches style defense. So it'd be a really good way to answer that question that I've kind of had in my head for a while, because you are a team where I've seen that from one season tried one way and one season is doing another way. So it just kind of like struck me all of a sudden.
Yeah. I think it'll be a mix. I think I've got the tools now to be able to control the passing game with my safeties and my linebackers, now with Urlacher as well. But I think I've got enough tools all over that I can adjust based on who I'm playing against. And I don't think I had that flexibility last year.
Gotcha.
Because my tackles weren't very good.
All right. If you have to decide between the two of them, which one do you think you were going to keep?
Between Urlacher and Wilfork?
Yeah.
Probably, I would say I'd probably keep Urlacher, just because the step down to Harris is not that big. It is kind of big, but it's not that big. The step down from Urlacher to Lattimore or Peterson is pretty big. So
yeah,
if I had to give one away, it'd probably be Wilfork.
Yeah, that's a linebacker. You can max them out at 3 different positions. So I agree. I hear you.
I think we're all missing the really crucial point here, is that New England have finally lost some talent. So let's just all take a moment to remember that finally started to lose some players. I'm sorry, Rizzo, but it had to happen at some point. Losing Wilfork is obviously a big miss for them as well. I'm interested to see what the Panthers do on defense and how you line up, what formations you play with some of these guys now. It's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of rotation. There's going to be what I did last year was I had like 7 or 8 different linebackers rotating in and out in the first half of the season, just based on the different patches. I had some different defensive ends going in and there. I'll probably do a little bit of the same here. Maybe have some lineups where I move Hightower back to the linebacker position and have a little bit bigger of a defensive front.
Yeah, you have a lot of versatility.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal, was to get as much versatility in there as possible at the linebacker spot. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not the best coach, I know that, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, I don't really think any of us are the best anymore. It's like I really do think that we're all going to be a little surprised from some of the changes.
Yeah,
by the way, I actually did use the coach playbook for the entire season last year defensively. So hoping to kind of get into actually creating a playbook this year defensively.
Well, now you've got the players to certainly try and take advantage of it.
Yeah.
In my opinion. It'd be really interesting, because we know that we know about Wilfork and Harris. We've seen them, but it's interesting for me for 2 points. You've signed 2 Bears, 2 Bears defensive players, which is interesting in itself. And I'll be interested to see how Urlacher does in whatever scheme you put in, because he has probably not been fully utilized, it's fair to say, with some of the previous GMs in Chicago. I know we've got a new GM in there now, so possibly slightly different going forward for them. But previously, apart from the first year, I can't remember who the GM was. I think we had a veteran GM in the Bears, but where he had 12 sacks and pass deflections, and I think he was playing him all over the place because of his speed. Be interested to see what you can bring out of someone like Urlacher, who could play anywhere from safety to the defensive end, to be honest with you, in this engine.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's going to be a really, really interesting season. I think I don't really think there are favorites right now.
No. I just want to throw one more name at you guys, just because this is the one that's maybe sort of stand up and think, oh my God, my division is going to be an absolute nightmare going forward now. It's not a case of the Packers and us anymore. I think the Bears have made so much progress just in free agency this year. Signing Calvin Johnson was the one that I thought, oh my God, that's a really good deal they've signed him on. So they've signed him for 6 years, but I think it's a declining, a front heavy deal. which I think is only going to go down over time. I think I'll have to double check that. But I remember looking at this deal and thinking, yeah, they've been really smart with bringing this guy in. I don't know. What interested to get your thoughts on this, because they've probably lacked some receiving talent for Cutler in previous years. They've now got an elite wide receiver one. I'm quite interested to see how they do this year.
Yeah, same here. Until I started messaging with Luke and the new GM, making deals and things like that. I hadn't really taken a look at that roster in a long time. And the first thing that struck me was, man, that you could really tell they just didn't have a GM that was, I guess, had the time to really work with what they had, because it seems like that team should have been in the conversation with the rest of you guys over there every single season.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that we've sort of skated around the edges of it, but I mean, do you guys sort of agree that with some of these signings here, the league parity is going to be really interesting to see next year? I can't think of a team off the top of my head that's is going to be right the way down there. I can't see us having a team that's going to win like maybe 1 or 2 games this year. I think it could be quite a lot closer from top to bottom.
Yeah, no, I definitely think this is going to be one of those seasons where coaching comes to play. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, we've talked about free agency. We'll sort of move on now. I know one of the things that we asked the GMs about what we could talk about on the podcast, and, thinking, we might get some questions about how's their team doing, what are our views on their signings. No. They just want to hear us say crazy names that we've got in the league. So we basically asked them, what are the crazy names you want us to try and pronounce? And I've got a couple here. So let me just close down some of these windows. And I'm, of course, being the presenter, I'm not going to go first. I'm going to let you guys share the pain with this. So I think the first one I would like to hear you guys try and say is this one. So whoever wants to have a crack first, Josh or Kairos, have a go.
All right, I'll go with Adewale Ojomo.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Adewale Ojomo.
So I was going to say Adewale Ojomo. So I think we're fairly similar. It's the first name. It's the first name I'm struggling with here. Is it Adewale or Adewale?
I'm actually going to Adewale.
Yeah, that's what I said. Adewale.
Okay.
That's what I think it is.
We haven't got the answer to know how to actually say his name, by the way. We're just going to have a stab in it. I haven't done that much research for this episode, so I've got a second one here. I don't know if you guys have got any other names that you found looking through, and we'll try and find them as well. But this second one
is at the end.
Yeah, Kairos, you've got a few. This one is a cracker. So, because Kairos has done some research, and myself and Josh have clearly not done any research. Josh, you're going to have a crack at this one first.
Oh.
All right.
So I think we'll all get the first name right.
Michael.
Yeah, I agree. That's Michael.
Uman Walanu.
I reckon they use a silent U, so I reckon it's Humanwani. Humanwani.
I'm gonna go completely phonetical. Humanawanawi. That's what I'm gonna go with.
Wani. Michael Humana Uwani. I'm gonna have to find out where this guy's originally from, because that is a crazy last name.
If it was let's see.
Here we go.
It would be Humana. It'd be Humanawani if it was phonetical, I think. Because the A space A makes the long A sound. So
yeah, so it says here that he was originally he's a Hawaiian, so hence the last name, I would imagine. Yeah. And he's Italian-Irish descent, so it's clearly a Hawaiian last name. I don't know if we have any Hawaiians in the league, but maybe they can try and help us pronounce this going forward.
Well, they are. I'm sure they're laughing.
I'm just grateful he's a free agent and no one signed him.
They're laughing or really offended.
I mean, if someone signed him and actually played him, and we had to talk about him a little bit more, I think we'd be struggling here. Yeah, that's it. I don't know how to say this one, to be honest with you.
I found one that's even worse in the first round of the draft.
Okay. We'll come to the draft ones a little bit later when we talk about the draft.
Yeah.
I know Kairos had a couple that he had, but I've just found the pronunciation for this one, and it's in terms of phonetically, it's Uuma na wa ni e. Apparently,
I'm seeing a little bit different. I've got O Mana Wanui.
Uuma na wui. Wow, that is a challenge.
It's a tough one, yeah.
So the H was silent to start.
Yeah, the H is silent.
Yeah.
My God, I'd never have guessed that.
I wouldn't either.
Wow. Okay. Right, Kairos, what other ones have you managed to find then?
All right, I'm gonna ping you on here real quick.
Okay, let me just grab that.
You can get that
1
one.
second. Okay. So our next one up is this one here. I'll have a go at this one then. It's another someone from the Hawaii college, so it must be a Hawaiian name again.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I would have said Isa. I would say the P silent. Isa Tinu I Samoa. Tinoa Samoa.
Pretty close. It's Pisa Tino I Samoa.
Oh,
Yeah, you're almost.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close.
is it Pisa or Isa? It's the P.
Yeah, it's Pisa. The P. You say
Do you
the P.
reckon that's silent, or do you reckon that's? I don't know. I have no idea.
I googled the pronunciation for all
Josh,
of these.
what do you reckon? Do you reckon that P is silent, or is there?
I think it's Pisa. I think it's Pisa Tina Isamoa.
He's one of your players. You should know.
Well, in that case, it's Pisa Tina Isamoa.
All right, should I do two more?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go
All
for it. Send them over, and I'll put them up.
Yep. All right, let me get this one here.
Okay.
This one's not too bad.
Okay. Oh my goodness me.
I'll
Go on, Josh. Go on.
Luis Nzegwu.
Yep.
So I would say that Louis Nzegwu.
Yeah. So I was when I saw it, I was kind of overthinking it. I was wondering whether the N or the Z was silent, but you just say both of them.
Right. Okay.
And then the last one is this is pretty much the reason I wanted to do this segment.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Expecting like 20 letters.
More, I think.
Okay, let's have a look. Is this an actual
is that player from the Colts?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh my god. Seriously though, right? This really makes me appreciate any sports announcer. Imagine the challenge they must have to try and do some of these. I would have said that's Ikpon Musa Ikbinuson.
All right. Josh, you want to give it a shot?
Ikpono Musa Igbinosen.
You've got the last names pretty close. So the K in the first name is silent, and the N in the first name is silent. So it's Ipo Mosa Igbinoson.
My goodness me.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that entire 5 letter is one syllable. Mosa.
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, he goes by Ike. I would too, but apparently.
Oh wow. Okay.
Probably gotten tired of his teammates looking at his nameplate and going, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Oh, that was a challenging segment. That was, as I said, I really have some empathy for sports announcers now when they get some of these names because it's certainly a challenge.
Yeah, you have that like a degree in linguistics as well.
Yeah,
I bet some of them just write it out phonetically and just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they must have to.
I've seen them read it off the cards, like I practiced this. Here we go.
True. I know Charles Barkley does that on Inside the NBA.
No, I know. I've heard like some of the legends, openly admitted, like Marv Albert, like like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagine like, imagine when you're a little child and you're trying to spell your name as well. I mean, that's a challenge as well, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. If anyone finds any other crazy names, then feel free to send them over, and we'll have a crack at them on the next show. But obviously, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is looking at the draft. So I guess first up, we shall start with the top sort of. We're going to look at sort of the first 2 rounds really, and kind of get you guys to just have any thoughts of any players, or and if there's some great names, as you said, Josh, we can try and work out how to pronounce them as well. But here's sort of the first top end of the draft, which has been projected. What are your guys' thoughts of this draft? Just looking at names, or looking at maybe some of your preliminary coach scouting that you've got, and anything sort of standing out to you so far?
Well, I think the first thing that stands out to me is that Florida State is well represented in the first round of this draft with 2 players. So go alma mater. Other than that, I would like to point out that name that I really wanted to bring out to you guys. If you look at the defensive end from BYU, Ethan Malalua.
Ethan Manumelanua. That is a tough one.
Yeah. Stone, if you're listening to this, we're not drafting him. I'm sorry, it's not happening. I'm not saying his name all the time. That's a challenging one.
You can just call him Manu.
Yeah, I think I'll just call him Ethan. Ethan sounds good. I can do Ethan.
EM.
How do you say? So how do you say the guard? Xavier Suafilo?
I thought it was Suafilo.
Is it just
Suafilo? I think it's Xavier Suafilo.
Oh, okay, Xavier. Okay.
But I know a few players in this draft. He's one of them. Of course, Dawkins and Telvin Smith. I'm familiar with those guys. But along with him, Waddle, I think in real life was an excellent tackle. So this draft, and of course, everyone knows Aaron Donald. Like this is the Aaron Donald draft. So we got another good one. I wonder if HaHa Clinton Dix will be as good as his NFL counterpart. We've actually got a lot of good free safeties in the league. So
yeah. I mean, what's interesting for me is when I looked at this, and when the game projected the players, there's a lot of defensive tackles in this first round as well, which I was interested about. I thought there would be naturally, because a lot of the defensive tackles have gone into free agency, and for those who don't know, the way the game works out, the scoring ratings for scouting is based on active players, and active players are defined by being on a roster. So given that a lot of the defensive tackles are in free agency, they're not on an active roster. But given that a couple of them just signed this last sim, there's still a lot of defensive tackles in this first round, and projected anyway. John Jenkins, Bernie Logan, Everett Dawkins, Roosevelt Nix, Aaron Donald, obviously we've talked about. And I think there's a couple of others in the back end of this round as well.
It hasn't really moved at all, so they're all talented.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't think the projections change, even with free agency. I think they start at the beginning of free agency and then they just stay there.
Yeah, maybe not. But I mean, just to give you a flavor, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I go to the other tab, I'll show you guys a bit later in a minute. 7. I think it's about at least 10 defensive tackles projected to go in the first round and a half, really, which is quite a lot.
Is Devontae Adams the first wide receiver that we've had projected first round?
I think so. Yeah, Julio Jones, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a projected wide receiver go first round since in the 4 seasons we've had so far. So
was Julio Jones a first round projection? Because he went early.
I think he was 1 to 2, wasn't he? If I remember.
Who would you say?
Julio Jones last year, was he projected 1 to 2?
I don't remember. I think you might be right. I think it was 1 to 2.
Yeah. He was picked really early. I think he was picked top 5, but I don't think he was projected.
No, he was not projected that. He was not projected that high. I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, just staying on this page, Kairos, is there any sort of names that stand out to you? I mean, we've talked about Aaron Donald and Devontae Adams. Are there any others that you're sort of interested either to see a bit more scouting on, or interested because you know the name, or just an interesting observation?
Well, I think the big thing there is that there's no franchise quarterback. not even any quarterback names that I recognize at all, actually.
Yeah.
I take that back. There's Jimmy Garoppolo in round 5. There's Taj Boyd in the late rounds, but I don't recognize any of the other quarterback names in this draft.
Yeah, someone's going to get a sleeper.
Yeah, there's either going to be some major sleepers in here, or there just aren't any good quarterbacks. So that's new. That's not something we've had in 4 years. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be the first, probably be the first draft, I would imagine, where a quarterback doesn't go number 1 as well.
Yeah,
that's true.
Which is different.
Yeah. Then after that, I'm just really interested to see Devontae Adams.
This first round is going to be completely dominated by the trenches, but like that's kind of how the league has been since we've started this. Like, we might see a safety or a cornerback or a linebacker every once in a while, but it seems like it's typically defensive ends and defensive tackles that go like the first, and would you say like guards and guards and offensive tackles that go like the first 30, 40 picks.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's, if I pull up the second screen as well, just whilst we're kind of chatting through. I guess what's interesting for me with this one is that when I was looking through the retired list, because obviously I lost Dawkins, the defensive end. There's a lot of defensive ends that we've lost very early in this league in comparison to real life, which to me shows us there's a bit of a shortage there at the moment. So probably why there's a lot of defensive tackles and defensive ends projected to go in these first sort of round and a half, really. It's just because it's a position of need for most of the league, to be honest with you. So that I think it'll be interesting to see how some of those guys come out once scouting is completed.
Yeah, no, I wish there was some way for the league, like the inner workings of the league, to control a little bit about the retirements, because like defensive end is such a valuable position in the NFL that you see like the really good ones hang on to like really late ages, like 37, 38. I think Cam Wake started for the Titans last year at like the age of 40.
Yeah. It's just kind of all over the place in this league, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite, in a sense, it's quite nice just to see a little bit of difference, a little bit of randomness. So we've already seen, obviously, Drew Brees go, Tom Brady go, 2 quarterbacks who, played a little bit longer in real life. One's still playing, one definitely played a lot longer until he retired. So I mean, it's interesting to see. I mean, the one that I always come back to is because we signed him a couple of seasons ago and then traded him last year was Barber, the cornerback, who I think I want to say he's 40 now in our game and is still going on, still playing, which is madness. But it's nice to have that little fluctuation, I guess.
It definitely makes it real. I lost one of my best linebackers to a surprise retirement. He hadn't regressed or anything. I was just, I think it was like 31. So, that threw my offseason for a loop. But, the challenge is good. It makes it more realistic.
There's been some retirements in the late 20s also that we've seen. I think we've seen some running backs.
Yeah, I think
they're still at the top of their game and they just go and retire.
Didn't CJ retire at 29?
27, I think he was, wasn't he? I think he was really young.
He was really young.
Which was a shock.
So happy I traded him.
I mean, I guess in terms of the draft, I mean, do you see anyone else sort of probably, I know it's early because we haven't scouted and we've just got the coaching grades, which, we know are, fluctuate a little bit. But do you see anyone sort of challenging Aaron Donald for that number 1 position out of the names you've seen so far? Or are there any others that you think, perhaps I might want to scout? Because, I would want to scout if I had the number 1 overall pick just to check. Is there anyone who's sort of near him in what you think? Because it's, it's a position of need. But,
I think the only thing that beats Aaron Donald from going number 1 is if one of these other stud defensive tackles has the speed to play defensive end as well, and Aaron Donald doesn't. Like, we just don't know. Like, he might be really high in like strength and like agility and something. Like, he might just have a weird mix and like there's someone else who's better. But otherwise, like, no. Like this whole, like I think there's like maybe 2 offensive players projected to go 1 in the first round in this entire like draft. So like it's gonna be a defensive draft, and he looks like the best defensive player.
Yeah, I've got to go along with that. I think there's a lot of offensive linemen also. I think there's 10 it's about 10 offensive linemen in the first round. And then there's like one quarterback, one wide receiver, a couple of tight ends, and then it's all defense.
There's a lot of strong safeties and cornerbacks.
Yeah.
Which like is a bummer for me because like the last 2 seasons I've been wanting a strong safety, and I just had to like move up and down the draft to figure out how to grab one, and now it looks like this one's flooded with them.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting. We haven't done any scouting yet, so we don't necessarily know how these projections work. There's some names we've picked up on that are familiar. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. We've got I think two more free agency sims to go, and then we get to the draft at the back end of this week, and we see who goes number one and who goes elsewhere, and have a bit more of a closer projection of what we think. We'll try and put a mock out at some point, just to get that out there for everyone. But yeah, no, it's been great to have you guys on, Josh and Kairos.
While we're still on this page, real quick,
go on.
I just noticed one of the top 10 defensive tackles is 248 pounds. Roosevelt Nix. Want to make sure that that's actually real. There's not a typo there or something.
Yeah, that he might really. How much did he say weigh?
248.
He might really be a defensive end.
Yeah, I can see that. Let me Google him real quick and see what he actually is. He's a fullback.
Oh wow. Okay, that one might just be completely.
I think Roosevelt Nix. I remember but we talked about this the other week. So he was a fullback in the NFL, but he actually registered for the draft as a defensive tackle because he was a defensive tackle in college, I think.
Interesting.
I think that's the case. So hence why he is slightly undersized and slightly underweight to everyone else. So I believe that is the case.
See, and now the game would let you switch players from offense to defense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Well, no, seriously, one of my cornerbacks would be an amazing wide receiver. He like his hands are 70, but everything else is like insanely good. I'm like, I wish I could play you a wide receiver sometimes.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that for a couple of my guys. Had a wide receiver that probably would have been a good corner actually because his hands are low.
I mean, I'm sure we're going to get as we move on in the league, we're going to get more players with multiple positions. We know that happens in the NFL now, where players can play offense or defense in different positions. I don't know how we would tackle that going forward, but yeah, I mean, Roosevelt Nix is just an interesting one because I think we did talk about that one. He did play defensive tackle, and it's crazy. He's still projected top 10, even though he's a defensive tackle and he's undersized and underweight. So, I'd be interested to scout him anyway, just to see what he looks like.
Yeah, I would take that to mean his ratings must be really good.
Yeah, he must be crazy good.
Maybe a wild card for number one.
I just noticed those top 2 tackles at 332 pounds. Whoa!
Oh wow,
big boys.
Yeah. Fit well on my line.
I haven't seen a player come through yet that's as big as my defensive tackle. I think he's still the fattest player in the league. He's 375.
Wow. Yeah, I've got a 350 lineman. He's also 6'11".
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, Matt O'Donnell.
Does he get a lot of deflections?
No, he's offensive tackle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He gives a lot of pancakes though.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. You can just sit on the opposition, to be honest with you, if you weigh 370 pounds.
It's like Andre the Giant playing offensive lineman. It's like holding your forehead with his hand. Just like, no.
Cool. Okay. Well, I mean, that gives a little bit of a recap of the draft, and we'll see with scouting whether this actually holds up to projections in game. But best of luck to Josh and Kairos with the rest of free agency and the offseason and the draft and everything else that we've got to do before we get to the regular season. Yeah, we'll see how it pans out. We'll see lots of teams with cap left. Lots of teams still got to, probably bring some talent in via the draft. And we'll certainly be back before the start of the regular season to kind of give our projections on what we think will happen. And I'm sure I'm sure the Packers GM Zach will want to be on that one, as he does a fantastic pre-season article every year. So we'll certainly get him back on for that one. But best of luck to you both for the off season.
Thank you. Appreciate it.